All right, hi everyone. Today we're going to be doing a session that's quite interesting. I'm not going to be leading this one, obviously. The goal here is to give you guys a voice. Anyone who has an interest, a passion, whatever that you want to explore and share with others, this is your opportunity to do so. So last week, Mr. Angus did a session over here. This week, it's going to be Miss Eva. And without further ado, go ahead.
So yeah, Michael introduced me already. My name is Eva, and today I'm going to be presenting. So a few weeks ago, Michael introduced us to the clash of civilizations. He introduced us to why civilizations clash. So today we are going to be talking about clashes, but we're not going to be talking about why they clash, but how they clash and how to manage this clash. So already, let's put a few reminders. What is a way in which civilizations clash? Does anyone have any idea? What is the way in which civilizations clash?
War.
Yeah?
War.
Yeah, exactly, war. So war has been around for millions of years. It is in the nature of most living organisms, and it is basically us to engage in battle, defeat opponents, and dominate. For as long as humanity has existed, humans have been fighting, clashing against each other. At first, it was more of an animalistic conflict, like we see in the animal kingdom today. It could have been territory being disputed, or maybe resources like food. But today we see different type of conflicts emerging. We see different things. So what makes those conflicts different to what we see with elephants and rhinos, wolves and coyotes? What makes humans different to animals? So some might say complex beliefs, opinions, principles, and those are pretty good answers. But over the years, humans have evolved. We are an intelligent species. We are at the top of the food chain. We have colonized an entire planet, and we are trying to do so with others. So that means that our species, the human species, is not solely based on survival anymore. We have differentiated ourselves from this animal nature we all possess. Yet some of our actions, some of our conflicts, still reflect those basic territorial desires possessed by animals. For example, take the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. Can you tell me in a nutshell what they're fighting about? Yeah?
Ethnic tensions.
Yeah.
Kind of, but more in a nutshell.
Cultural differences.
More in a nutshell.
Religion. Economical.
More in a nutshell. You have it, territory. They want land. The same thing that tigers could fight for. So besides from what was previously stated, what actually makes us different from animals, from the original state of humanity? Well, believe it or not, this is an ongoing debate that has been raging for quite a while now. Some might say that our ability of complex reasoning, of using complex language, our ability to solve different problems, and introspection. Introspection is actually a pretty interesting point. So it has been studied by, pretty interesting point that has been studied by this guy. That has been studied by this guy, Nicholas Humphrey, a pretty well-known neuropsychologist. He said that what actually differentiates us from animals, and I quote, is that we observe the inner workings of our mind and can project them onto other beings and simulate their mindsets. In other words, we consider how we act and why we act this way, and then we use the information we've collected and the conclusions we've made in order to make plans. Others have stated that using complex language created the ability to conceptualize beyond our immediate perceptions. It allows us to think of possible futures and ourselves and those events. It allows us to create that which we cannot directly perceive and at the same time perceive the immediate now. Other animals can only perceive the difference between now and future, and on a very limited scale. So what do we actually have now? We have an ability to make plans based on introspection and a developed ability to conceptualize the future based on experience. But can you tell me what's the actual products of those two abilities and those ability to make plans and conceptualize the future? What do they make together? Any ideas?
Well, you said conceptualize
Yeah.
and plan the future.
Yeah.
Conceptualize.
It is related to war.
Conceptualize.
Any ideas? Starts with an S.
What?
Sorry?
Suicide.
No. No.
Strategy. Shamanism.
You have it. Strategy. And they're using complex strategy. And
Strategy.
So they're using complex strategy. And today we're going to concentrate on a very specific aspect and very universal aspect of strategy. War strategy.
Sun Tzu, the art of war.
So-
Only book.
So war strategy has been around for thousands of years. It was around in ancient Egypt as well as during the Roman Empire, and countless manuscripts have been written about it. But what if I told you that of all those manuscripts, one actually stands out from the lot? One is the ultimate reference, not only for war strategy, but also strategy in itself. And today, we'll be exploring this book. That is none other than, drumroll please, The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Well, geostrategy is Napoleon next.
It's the first book that actually
It's the
defines
first, and
what
yet it's still very relevant.
strategy.
It was supposedly written over 2.5 thousand years ago by this guy, Sun Tzu. So, a little background information on Sun Tzu. He was born Sun Wu in China around 540 BC. And I say around because a lot of this history is actually disagreed on. When he was born is even unclear. There are conflicting and unreliable stories, some even questioning if Sun Tzu was one person or cumulative of other notable men. You can understand this after 2,500 years, things get lost in translation. But according to some sources, Sun Wu did exist and eventually rose up to become a general, earning him the title of Sun Wu, or Master's Son, and writing the military guides that we are discussing here today. But whether Sun Tzu was real or not, the book that we're talking about is real. It is a concrete thing. And despite having been written nearly 3,000 years ago, it is still one of the most relevant books we know of. Modern politicians and entrepreneurs still use it today, and we're going to talk about a few examples later. So now let's dive into the actual book. The first thing we have to understand is that if war is avoidable, you should avoid it. You can't lose resources in an inexistent battle. You can't lose human lives in an inexistent battle. Instead, try to navigate your way through the conflict. Find common ground. Maybe build an alliance with your so-called enemy. I mean, you don't know. It might be actually more beneficial than destroying this enemy. And even if war is inevitable, there is a way to wage through it. A way to win the war, but to still prevent unnecessary losses while promoting a certain victory. And that is what we're going to be exploring today. So, Sun Tzu starts by saying that we shouldn't take war as a game. We shouldn't take war as a fun activity. We should take war for what it is, a matter of life and death, a road either to safety or to ruin. And that is why planning is absolutely necessary and cannot be neglected. He established 5 key factors with which we can actually determine the outcome of the war before the war. So does anybody actually have an idea of what those are?
Of what? Sorry?
The 5 key factors that can determine the war and the outcome before it. Yeah.
I read the book.
Yeah.
There's one. There's sorry.
You read it?
I read half.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
So your opponent, like your power, or what it was again?
Not quite.
No, but not like the your.
Well, how many people actually fight the war?
We made us.
It is a bit different. So, the 5 factors are the moral law, heaven, earth, method and discipline, and the commander. So, now that
Heaven?
you've seen it, does anybody know what they actually stand for?
Well, heaven. I
Earth
mean,
is actually physically the terrain you're fighting on.
Kinda, yeah?
Heaven is you can win if God's not on your side.
Not
chance.
exactly.
I think chance. No.
Okay, so the moral law causes the people to be in complete accord with the ruler. They will follow the ruler, whether they put themselves in danger or whether it doesn't exactly align with what they believe. They will follow the ruler because it is what they believe is good. It is what they will do, whatever happens. Heaven signifies night and day, cold and heat, time and season. Earth comprises distances, great and small, danger and security, open ground and narrow passes, the chances of life and death. The commander, it stands for the virtues of wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage, and strictness, what the soldiers stand for, and therefore what their army stands for. And by methods and disciplines are to be understood the arrangement of the army in its proper subdivisions, the gradations of ranks among the officers, who is a high officer, who is commander, who is just lieutenant, and also the maintenance of roads, which supplies maybe the army, and the control of funds. So, yeah, I see your face. So basically, method and discipline is how the army is managed, who are the officials, who are in power, and how are the resources managed. Where does money go? How does money get to the army? And those 5 key factors, you should always have them in mind when you engage into battle. If you do not consider them, no matter how powerful you are, no matter how strong you are, you will lose. And you will lose because you are not prepared. You will lose because you overestimated your chances. It is according to those circumstances that you should base your strategy. Because you can change a strategy based on circumstances, but the circumstances will not change based on your strategy. So if you consider the circumstances and see that your enemy well exceeds you in advantages and strengths, it is better to avoid conflict. You can predict loss and therefore avoid loss. But in order to win, you should also consider that all warfare is based on one thing. Does anybody know what it is? What is warfare based on? No.
Money, women.
No.
Not men as a gender, people.
I see.
Come on. Don't
So
be this-
does anybody actually know?
strategy?
Kinda, but no.
Intent.
Starts with a D.
Intent.
No, starts with a D.
Desire.
Now written.
Deception. Yes, deception.
Based on the
You should learn all that you can about your opponent while keeping him in the dark and as blind as possible about your own situation. Warfare is based on deception. When able to attack, you have to seem unable. When using your forces, you must seem inactive. When we are near, we must make the enemy believe that we are far away. When we are far, we must make them believe that we are near. Hold out base, feign disorder, and create disorder. Crush him. Your opponent's weaknesses are your strengths. If he has a hot temper, irritate him. Pretend to be weak so that he may grow arrogant. If he is comfortable, give him no rest. If his forces are united, separate them. Attack him when he is unprepared. Appear when you are not expected. So, deception.
This is very warlike.
So, quoting Sun Tzu, move, swift as the wind and closely formed as a wood, and be still as a mountain. But what do we actually take from that? What do we understand? We understand that we can't make calculations for battle during the battle. You have to make them beforehand. Be prepared. You can't be surprised because surprise is the element of defeat. So we've talked about preparation, but now what about the actual war? How do we navigate through it? Well, first of all, you have to consider its cost. You have to consider the losses. One should keep in mind that resources, should they be money or even men in some situations, are finite. They have a limit which you cannot cross. Do not exhaust yourself by laying a long siege on a city, because laying a long siege leads to something that you absolutely must avoid in wars. Do you guys have any idea what it is? What we must avoid?
Exhaustion.
Kinda, yeah, but more. No, more widely.
Diseases, interest.
No, but it does start with a D.
Money.
No, it starts with a D.
Depression.
No, delays.
Delays.
While we have heard
Oh,
of
as
stupid
fast as possible.
delays, while we have heard of stupid rush in war, true cleverness has never been associated with delays. Do not promote excess losses. Exhausting yourself enlarges your chances of losing, not of winning. Strike fast and strike well, because even the finest sword, when plunged into salt water, will eventually rust. Yes.
You tell him. Very, very nice.
No delays.
No delays.
So now, that doesn't mean that you should quickly burn your enemy's resources and cities to the ground. Instead, use them as your own. Do not kill soldiers that can either give you information or join your own ranks. Do not promote ego by believing your enemy's resources or by believing that your enemy's resources are not as good as your own, because that will prevent you from seizing resources that could be incredibly useful in the future. Use your enemy's resources as your own. Do not break them. So, do you think that a city razed to the ground is going to be useful?
Yes.
Yes.
I
Why?
mean, it's better if you convince the people to work in your advantages.
Yeah, but then do you truly believe that raising a city to the ground will convince the people to work for you?
No, because there won't be any more people.
If they're not there, control them by fear.
I mean-
remove the people.
I mean, if you burn the people, not the city.
No, because actually,
I mean,
no, because people are attached to places.
no.
Instead of actually breaking the cities, of actually raising the cities, you have to politically destroy them and leave the city and people intact. Make them lose faith, make them lost, and then provide them a way out. Transform them not into a foreign waste, but into your own strength. Using, not breaking. So then instead, so now what are some actual stratagems, when you're in the war and about to fight? Well, there are actually multiple stratagems based on the size of your army and its strength. So first of all, what happens when you largely outnumber the army?
When you're outnumbered, or when you're
Yeah, no, when you largely outnumber the army, like 10 to 1.
just throw bodies at the bullets.
Well,
That's what.
you
that's
point
what-
the-
throw body. Yeah, exactly. So
well, you can they won't have any more intention to fight because they're assured to lose. So now you can convince them of doing something. You can
But what if they are not assured to lose?
what?
What if they are not? What if they, in their minds, they can still lose? How do you actually strategically surround them?
Show them
Well,
how many
there is-
troops you have.
Tell
and
us
that's
If you okay, you say that we have that the opponent has way less people, way less of an army
Yes.
than us. We just show them how much we have, and
Yes, but if they are still not giving up, how should you position your army?
around
like
them,
the-
surround. Oh no, you go far. You go a little bit far.
That's later.
You circle them.
You surround them. So if you largely outnumber your army, you surround them. You leave them no escape. And it's not laying a siege. It's trapping them into a hole that they cannot escape from. So now we talked about 10 to 1, but what about 5 to 1? You still largely outnumber them, but you can't surround them. Yes.
You hit them from two sides or two sides the same.
No.
On the right and the left.
No.
Yes, that's really good, but what if you actually can't do that? What if you're both on a plane and you're coming from two sides of a plane and nobody has the advantage at the start? How do you actually position your troops? Yes.
Well, if the enemy is here, then you put your enemies as to form a pyramid.
pyramid.
Well,
Geometry.
a triangle like this.
Well,
the team keeps them from
Triangle is actually pretty good.
Yeah, interesting.
You do this because your army will fight all that they want with this, but then this will come later and you will absolutely smash them. You have to attack them. You have to attack them directly and powerfully.
And if the ground prevents you of doing that, what do you do? I don't know, but like if the ground.
Just move
Yes.
away from
So
the
you're
battle.
talking about the earth factor. So what is modified into the earth factor? Tell me.
Sir?
You're talking about the earth factor,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
what is modified in your scenario?
Something that prevents you of getting it to this position.
Well,
And you
yeah,
know-
that's actually terrain. Really good. That's a terrain, and that's a point that we are going to talk about later. This is, let's say, on the plane, okay?
Okay. Yeah.
So now, if it's 2 to 1, what do?
You do the same thing, but the 3 lines on the left you take them away, and so in that way you choose one.
That's pretty good, but there's another option. 2 to 1, what do you do?
Well, you have twice this. You have if there's 2 of them and 4 of you. You have, for example, one square on the top and one on the bottom. You do the same thing. You double.
Yeah, that's good. But one other strategy that is really good is to divide them. It is easier to fight small chunks.
Divide to conquer.
It is easier to fight small chunks than a large chunk. So even if fighting there are other strategies, this is the best one. If you eat a large chunk of food, is it actually better to eat a large chunk of food or smaller chunks of food?
Smaller.
Exactly, because that is
Here,
easier.
just-
But what about if it's a one-on-one? If forces are equal, what is
You make them think that you have more.
2 on 2 on.
Because
But
there's
you do one
stupid.
on one or half. You
Yeah, no, in 3 because in
Trying to
2
fight in two
there's
fronts.
60,000.
Free.
Yeah, 3.
That's a good one. It is free. You You find them equal, but the thing is, you take the advantages that we have talked about before and that we will talk about later, and that will give you the advantage. However, there are other situations when you are not equal or do not exceed your opponent. Those situations are when they outnumber you. When they outnumber you,
Run.
Well, you group yourself, you stay together. So, for example, let's say there are 3-3-1. You're gonna have three of them like this on the right, and then one of you group together.
While that can work, it is not the best one. Andrew?
You wait for the good members to strike, and you get all your troops.
Yep.
Because the way
Mm,
that
that
And then you take them one by one.
that can work. However, if they outnumber you too much, there is something that we have to do and that we usually do not like to do. Hide. And if they largely outnumber you, if you have absolutely no chance of winning, just escape. Now, I know what you might think. What? Escape? No, it's cowardice. But stupidly fighting a battle which you have no chance of winning does not make you brave, just stupid. Can anybody give me an example of when hiding and growing in strength actually turned out better? Andrew?
Search bar doesn't work.
Yeah, but another very well-known example, a negative example,
Wait.
was they hid and grew in strength.
Russia.
No, it was in the Middle East.
What'd you say?
When they hid and grew in strength.
Recent,
You tired the
recent or old?
Recent, pretty recent, yeah.
Iraq?
The Taliban in Afghanistan.
Really?
Yeah, because they were greatly outnumbered, and hiding was actually a winning strategy for the Taliban in Afghanistan. They hid between civilians and used secret hideouts and tunnels to remain unseen while still using propaganda techniques and maintaining both cohesion and flexibility among their ranks. If they had attacked their enemy head-on, they would have lost. But by using coordinated hit-and-run techniques, by staying hidden until they were strong enough to go back in the sun, they won. Well, they didn't win, but they proved to be a force to be reckoned with.
We didn't lose, we learned.
Why we?
That is something you have to consider. But there is something else you actually have to consider. What do you think it is? During the battle actually, when you're preparing to make an offense. Timing, exactly. So you must know when to fight and when not to. You must know how to deploy an army and where. You must have united officers and men serving together. You must be prepared for any surprises. And you need a general who will not falter under a ruler with no experience. If the king tells you not to fight, you fight. It's not about who has more men. It's not about who has the best technology. It's about strategy, preparation, because knowledge is power. And without the knowledge, you don't have the power. Sun Tzu said, and I quote, "If you know the enemy and know yourself, you must not fear the results of 100 battles. If you know the enemy, if you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle." So now, when do you think we should advance into battle? When do you actually think we should advance into battle?
When the enemy doesn't expect it.
Then for what?
when you have secured where you are.
When the enemy shows weakness.
Security. You said security. Can you develop on that?
Well, when the place where you are, like you secured your place.
Exactly. You have to secure yourself first. Before engaging in any battle whatsoever, you must secure your stand. You must put yourself beyond even the possibility of defeat before even dreaming of defeating your opponent. Securing ourselves against defeat is our job. But the opportunity to defeat is provided by the enemy itself. You see the troops getting tired, boom, you strike. You see chaos with their ranks, boom, you strike. Opportunities multiply as they are seized. A skillful general does not seek victory. A skillful general seeks victory, not battle. A terrible general seeks victory first. A clever fighter is not only one who wins, it is one who wins with ease. To do that, you must not falter. You must make no mistakes. And you must let your opponent make all of those mistakes.
This is just like a collection of Sun Tzu quotes smushed
No, that's also my interpretation.
Very nice.
Yeah, so that's what makes you sure to win. Because it means conquering an opponent that is already defeated. Now, yes, so securing your place. So now let's go to another aspect of war. If you attack at every point and you cover okay. Now the use of your force depends on two things. What are they? Two things. Yes.
Strength and weakness.
Exactly. Did you read the book?
No, I didn't.
My brother wrote a thesis on it.
Oh yeah, obviously. Okay. No.
Do you have a brother? That's the question.
So yeah, so how you use your force must depend on two things: strengths and weaknesses. You want all the preparations to favor you and your army. Arriving to battle first leaves your men rested. Okay, wait. Arriving to battle first leaves your men rested, and they are ready to attack. But arriving to battle second, it means that not only are you tired from marching, but you now need to fight. First come, first serve. You have to arrive before the other. You have to. Yes.
If you arrive second, maybe you can take them by surprise, as the French did that, as the English did that.
You can, but thus taking them by. You can, but thus.
Which other battle did we beat you at?
Yeah, and read. Thus taking them by surprise means that your troops aren't tired. Thus taking them by surprise means that your troops aren't exhausted from marching. No, you're still not at your top capacity. And the goal here is to have that goal capacity. So, arriving to battle first. But you must also force your opponents into weakness. A strong army must eat. How can you starve them? An army that is steady and unmovable, how can you force them out of their comfort zone? That is necessities. And you have to take the other army, you have to take the necessities out of the other army. If you attack at every point, you cover a large surface and makes the enemy weaker. But what do you also do by attacking at every point?
At every point.
Yeah, at every, attacking the enemy just straight line. Exactly. By attacking enemy at every point, you spread yourself thin. And even if you're strong, spreading yourself thin is never a good idea. You have to attack only at a few points of weaknesses. And you have to break their ranks and make the army crumble. But for that to work, your plan must remain secret. Otherwise, your enemy will strongly defend those points and you'll be the one crumbling, which we do not want. Yeah. But apart from the actual tactics, apart from that, there is actually a way to manage your forces, to make them, making them march for 70 kilometers will only result in the loss of men. There's a difference between pushing your men to gain advantage and pushing them too far. So we mentioned get into battle first. That is useful, but only if your entire army arrives at all. And furthermore, you must keep your soldiers disciplined. So Sun Tzu says that commanding a force that listens and obeys is one thing, whereas trying to command a force that's disobedient can bring you to ruin. So there's actually a story about Sun Tzu when he was given the order to train an army of concubines, which is pretty hard. Yeah, an army of concubines. He gives an order, they laugh. They don't listen. So they're really nervous, they laugh, they don't listen. So what do you think Sun Tzu did for them to actually listen?
Fear.
He took one of the concubines and put in charge.
No, that's too easy. Something more violent, yes.
He made them respect him.
How did he make them respect them?
Death penalty.
Yes, exactly. He killed two of the king's favorite concubines. And what do you know? Now the rest of them become obedient. He showcased power. He might have lost 2 concubines, but he earned 12 of obedient ones. He weighted the benefits and disadvantages and chose to pay the price. Exactly. A small yet disciplined army is 10 times better than a massive, chaotic army. Yes. So, you also need to consider the way you give the orders. If it's nighttime, use torches. If your voice can't carry, use drums. Make them hear you. And if you find weaknesses in your own men, don't dismiss them or throw the men out. Instead, use those weaknesses and make them into strength. Build them back up before you arrive into battle. Don't create useless losses. So now we say that, but if it's a good commander, yes, But there are also events when the commander is not good. So you should focus on tactics. What roads to take and what roads not to take. What cities to burn, what cities not to burn. There are quite a few things that can bring the downfall of a general, right? There are things that he does and that immediately ends in defeat. What are they?
What are they, guys?
What are the commander's downfall? What?
What'd you say?
Okay. What are some negative traits that a leader can possess?
Arrogance.
Yeah.
Arrogance, yes.
I was going to add.
Yes.
Not knowing his strengths and weaknesses.
Yes.
Not knowing his troops.
What are just in general? If you see, for example, a political leader or a business or maybe an entrepreneur, what are some weaknesses he can have?
Not being Napoleon.
What? Yes. So
Lack of confidence.
there are a few things. So recklessness and impatience. Being reckless leads to destruction. Cowardice and fear lead to eventual capture. A hot temper means that one can be easily manipulated and provoked. A high standard of honors means that one might be susceptible and sensitive to shame. That is also being too easily propagated. And lastly, an excessive compassion for the troops. That may cause a general to second guess his decisions and worry about them as opposed to focusing on victory alone. This is very important to consider for the wellness of your troops. But don't overdo it. Don't
Don't be too nice.
yeah, don't be too nice because you will end up losing. There is a good balance between caring about your troops and caring way too much about your troops. So Sun Tzu claims that whenever an army is defeated or slain, one of these five faults are to blame. So there's also something else that we talked about, and something that is important to categorize where you are. The place where you are is called a no, kinda, but terrain, exactly. So you have to consider the terrain, get into the advantageous terrain, and push your enemy into disadvantage. If your enemy has the advantage, force them to back down, force them to lose the advantage. But you should also be wary of other threats related to your own soldiers. If you're at number 10 to 1, your soldiers will likely flee in fear, which is why you have to keep them motivated and sturdy. One great example of that occurred during the American Revolution, actually. So Washington's troops were fleeing, scared of an army directed by an international superpower 10 times stronger than them. Yet Washington, Lafayette, they kept the troops strong and motivated them into being stronger, into actually fighting. And guess what? They won the War of Independence.
You got rid of Lafayette, I guess.
What?
Sorry, who?
Yeah.
Lafayette.
So the best general.
I never heard of him too.
The best generals know the terrain, know their armies, and know which difficulties they will face. Here are the keys to success according to Sun Tzu. If victory is clear, no matter what other people tell you, you fight. If defeat is certain, you do not fight. When fighting, you should not seek fear or blame, but do whatever it takes to obtain victory. You have to be certain. If the conditions are unsure, victory is not certain. If you don't know your soldiers, victory is not certain. And if victory is not certain, you have to make it certain. Now, Sun Tzu classifies battle into 9 possible situations. So, does anybody actually know those situations?
It's friendly ground.
No, it's about ground, but it's different type of ground. Can anybody actually name me one type of ground that Sun Tzu mentioned?
High ground.
No, okay. So, there's dispersive ground. Dispersive ground is when you fight the enemy on your own property. But what are the actual disadvantages of that? Because,
You can get arrogant.
what?
You can get arrogant.
Yes,
You can destroy. Go home.
more strategically.
You can destroy your own terrain.
Exactly. You destroy your own terrain. So yes, you know where you are, but don't destroy your terrain. And that is one of the main disadvantages of fighting on dispersive ground. Now, there's also facile ground, which is when you've broken into enemy territory, but you don't have the advantage and you haven't gained much. So you must fight on at the risk of rendering all your efforts useless. You must keep on going or everything will be lost. There's also contentious ground, which is when either side can gain a great advantage by taking a particular place. So you have to move forward, but don't engage aggressively until you have a clear advantage. Otherwise, you will lose a key victory. Open ground means that both armies have complete freedom, have all advantages and all disadvantages. Therefore, it is wise not to try and stop the enemy's movement because you have no terrain to support you. You do not know where you are. You have no advantages. So, But there's also interest ground. So interest ground it includes more than two parts. Interest ground is when you have multiple states interested. This is your chances to make allies, not enemies. Making allies is key when you have multiple parties. There's also heavy ground. When you're on heavy ground, so there's also heavy ground. It means that you have made a lot of progress and you have a few checkpoints behind you. You have a few cities that you did not burn. You have a few, let's say, rivers or lakes. And that is a key moment when you actually have to re-element yourself. If you have a few checkpoints that are secure, you take them. You take those resources because you did not burn them. So that is again an advantage of not burning the city. Yeah. If you're on intractable ground, it means that there are no marshes or forests and it's hard to get through terrain. Best thing to do is to try and avoid this ground, but if you can't, try to move through it as quickly as possible. When you're in disadvantages, don't stay here and be sad and be afraid of the disadvantages. No, you have to get rid of the disadvantages and go back into advantages. And there's also enclosed ground, which is narrow and leaves you vulnerable. And lastly, you have desperate ground or death ground. If your opponent is striking so powerfully, death ground is when your opponent is striking extremely powerfully and you are at a loss. You're weakened. You cannot fight anymore. But you still have one last resort. Because that powerful attack, it showcases that there is a weakness behind the opponent. It showcases that they want to be quick. And being too quick is a disadvantage. So you have to find your weak point and infiltrate them. Yes. So now, imagine if you're actually in a bad position and you really cannot do anything, not even infiltrate them. What do? You retreat. Exactly. Yeah. So, and there's also the use of you also have.
You can also use spies to see how.
Spies, great. Spies is the next point. So there are a few types of spies. There are few types of spies. So there are local spies, which live as civilians. There are internal spies, which are actually in the government of the other army. There are double agents that are spies that have actually come to destroy your army, but you turn them back into your cause. There are doomed spies, which was, doomed spies, victory relies on knowledge. Doomed spies spread false knowledge. And lastly, we have live spies who infiltrate and then return to your ranks, but they are not directly from your enemy's party. So spies are key, but it's very easy for them to turn on you because their job is basically to turn on people. So they absolutely have to be the best paid and best treated. But now that you have all this information, you must understand it. See through your enemy's eyes. Think through your enemy's brain. You must know your enemy, and you must become your enemy.
I think someone has a question.
Yes,
Difference between internal spies and double agents?
Okay, internal spies, they're officials, high officials from the government. For example, commanders from your enemy's troops that are actually turned to your cause secretly. And double agents, they're spies, normal spies, that will just come to actually spy on you, but you have found out about them and you have turned them into your cause, okay? Okay, yeah. Yeah. So now, we've covered all of Sun Tzu, The Art of War, but now it's time for you to put this all into practice. So yep. So now we have those 4 countries. We have Napoleonary. It is a country with a large territory and the largest armies of the 4 countries. It has a lot of resources and has the capacity of putting any of the 4 nations' capital city into a state of siege at any time. But its army is not very disciplined and its generals are pretty lazy.
That's British propaganda.
Yeah. All right, buddy.
Then we have
Rubbish.
Average height for the time.
we have Washingtonary. It is equal in size to Caesarionary. Washingtonary and Caesarionary are basically equal in force, equal in size. They're just- but they are still fighting against each other. There's the second largest, both are the second largest of the four countries, ex aequo, but they're smaller than Napoleonary, but larger than Hamiltonary. They have rather undisciplined soldiers, but very skilled officials, very skilled generals, and they have a pretty good amount of resources. But now there's the baby of the group, Augustusonary. It is equal in size. No, wait. No, maybe. Okay, Augustusonary is basically wrong, but okay, Augustusonary is a baby of the group. It has less terrain, smaller army, but it's a very efficient army, very highly trained officials, and very, very determined soldiers. And it has a few resources, but it's keeping those resources hidden. So now, can you just get into one, two, yeah.
So I don't know if we'll have time. We can do it next time.
We have 5 minutes, right?
No.
2 minutes. All right, whatever.
Oh, 2. Okay. So can you just give me right here what should those countries do in order to win a war against each other? Yes.
Bring Napoleon back from the dead.
Yeah.
Napoleon.
Well, Napoleon, he actually failed in one of those critics. So it's more complex than that. But when
It is because of bullshit.
exactly. So yeah. So what should you do? So what should you do to actually win a war? For example, if Napoleonary wanted to win a war against Caesarionary, what would Napoleonary have to do? If Napoleonary wanted to win a war and invade Caesarionary, what would Napoleonary have to do? Yes?
Well, circle all of the forces, and before that, they should discipline both of the army and the generals.
Exactly. If Augustusonary, the baby of the group, with very strong defenses and very strong army, but pretty small in number, wanted to actually invade Washingtonary, what would Augustusonary have to do? No.
Well, train.
What?
Ally with another.
No, they already had plenty of things.
They could ally with another country.
Allies, yes. They should use allies. Yeah.
Spies.
They're good commanders, but their soldiers are whack. Like, fix that.
No. They're very wrong.
No.
Well, I mean, we could do this next time, but the important is that you should focus. So I do recommend you reading The Art of War. It is a great strategy book, and it can also be used for modern tactics. For example, politicians, and especially in the business sector, when you actually have to fight against other companies, this can be extremely useful. So I recommend you read it.
All right. Thank you, guys. All right. Okay. All right. Thanks to Eva for her very first session, which I must say was of very high caliber. And yeah, see y'all next week.